those of you who have joined us live here today for our first of a series of webinars we'll be offering here at New Mexico State University Cooperative Extension. If you're listening to the recorded webinar that we've recorded, thank you also for joining us. So we will be recording this webinar and we will then make it available for people who were unable to join today. That webinar will be sending out information on where that recording is. So if you like the webinar and you think others that you know would benefit from the webinar, you can let them know that we'll be sending out a link. So this session is on creating a mindset of wellness. We thought this would be a good topic, at least from a live perspective, for the January webinar as people get started with their new year and perhaps have resolutions or goals that they'd like to meet around health or wellness, nutrition, exercise, managing stress better, a whole slew of things that you might be working on. So hopefully what we'll do in this session is address a lot of the things that can get in the way of these changes that we want to make, these goals that we want to complete in our lives. I'm going to be talking about a lot of the science in terms of how our brains work and how oftentimes the way that our brain is programmed, it actually sabotages us instead of helping us with our goals. So we'll be talking about that. And when you understand the science of how the brain works and how it could work against you, then you know the secret to combating that, to overcoming it, and almost hacking your brain in a sense. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this session. My name is Dr. Raquel Garzon. I'm a nutrition and wellness specialist here at Cooperative Extension, and this is one of the specialty areas that I cover. So what I wanted to start with is just this concept that oftentimes we know what we need to do. So there probably are some of you are on this webinar and you're listening and saying, yeah, I know I need to eat better and eat this and maybe not eat so much of that. And I know I'm supposed to exercise all the time and get at least 8 hours of sleep. You might be thinking, okay, I know what I need to do. The problem isn't in having a lack of information towards what I need to do, but it's really about being able to apply and execute and implement the information that I already have. So I call this the knowing doing gap. We've got the information, but we just don't apply it the way that we should in our lives. And I really like these quotes that I have here. To think is easy, to act is difficult, but to act as one thinks is the most difficult. And I would say that that's probably one of the biggest things that I encounter as I work with clients. But we know that knowing is not enough. We have to apply these things. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. What are those things that get in the way of applying what we already know, and what are some things that we can do to overcome it? Now, I want to talk a little bit about this concept of wellness and what I mean by it. And so I think of wellness as thriving in your life, really prospering or flourishing, growing, developing, being successful, progressing towards a goal, even under difficult circumstances. Everybody is starting in a different place, and I want to acknowledge that wellness isn't a certain look, it's not a certain weight. I think that everybody has to look, at where they're starting, and it's about doing better. It's about feeling better. It's about being able to give energy to those people and things that matter most to you in your life. And it's a journey for everybody. It's a wide spectrum. You may already have a health condition, and it doesn't mean that you can't be well with the health condition, or that you can't be well if you're overweight according to the standards. I think that we try to make it all about one thing, not having a disease and being a certain weight. And I just want to open it up to the idea that it's about every day feeling good and feeling like you have the energy to do the things that you need to do in your life, and also the things that you want to do in your life. So hopefully that resonates with you. I want to open up with just having you reflect on maybe a wellness goal that you might have for yourself, or maybe a change you'd like to make so that you do feel like you're thriving in your life, that you feel satisfied, happy, energetic, whatever it is that you define for yourself that you'd like to be, or maybe an area of your life that needs more attention. what I'd like to do is I'm going to attempt to do a poll here, so bear with me as it's our first one. So bear with me as I open up a poll and see if you are able to answer the poll. And it's asking what area of wellness you want to work on. And you can choose as many as you want, so you don't have to limit yourself to one. Just so I get a sense for what people are working on. Looks like almost everyone has answered. It says 11 out of 12 people have answered. There we go. It's 12 out of 12. So hopefully everybody had a chance to answer that. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results with you so that you can see what everybody answered and what people are working on. So I tried to put as many categories as I could think of. So you might be working on something that's not here, but you can see most people are working on nutrition and exercise, managing stress more effectively, which is fantastic. Spending more time for yourself and relaxing, reflecting, or having fun, getting more sleep, and then finally going to the doctor, dentist, checkups, exams that can get away from us sometimes. So excellent. You guys are working on a lot of different things here. And the good news is no matter what you're working on, you can benefit from what we're talking about in this particular session. Because again, we know we need to do these things. We know a lot of times how to do it, but it's actually executing on that. So what we're going to go over first are 5 barriers that can lead to what's called the knowing doing gap. And this is stuff that has been studied in the science. So it's not just made up. And hopefully as I talk about it, you're going to say, oh my gosh, my brain does that too. Or you can relate to this barrier that I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about the very first barrier. And this is a tendency on whether you think about, like, let's say that you're in a situation in which you are faced with having to make a food decision, like at a restaurant. So a lot of times when we're talking about food, you might think, oh man, if I eat healthy, that's going to help me live a really long time and maybe prevent some diseases from occurring. And as I'm older, I'm just gonna do better if I eat better right now. And then there are other people when making that decision that say, oh, I got to eat so that in the next couple of hours I don't feel sleepy and I can go home and get these things done. And tomorrow I have a whole calendar of stuff that I have planned and I want to be able to do that. And how you think makes a difference. And so when you're thinking about the benefits that you're going to get from either eating or exercising or sleeping or managing stress as being really, really far away, like, oh my gosh, I might live a long time and 20 years from now, this is all going to pay off. If that benefit that you're looking for is really far away, you're actually much more likely to give in and just do what feels good in the moment, which might be eat the wrong thing, just skip exercise, sleep in, stay up too late, stress out. And so that's just something to notice in yourself. If you're able to picture the benefits as being more immediate, like, oh, if I exercise right now, I'll have more energy in the next couple of hours, and that'll allow me to get all of these things done and just be nicer and feel good about myself. If you can bring those benefits that you're looking for to much sooner, something that you're going to be able to take advantage of in the next couple of hours or in the next day, you're actually much more likely to make better decisions with your food, or your exercise or your sleep or whatever it is that you're working on. So this is just an awareness for you to bring to whatever change you're deciding to work on. And if you haven't really thought about immediate, benefits that you could get, that might be something that you could work on. So you'll see here that I have actions. So these are the things that they have studied that actually help people to make the better decision that aligns with the change that they're working on. So think of positive results you'll get in the next several hours. And you want to think of anything and everything. So what are the physical benefits that you're going to get from doing the right thing? What are perhaps emotional benefits that you're going to feel good about yourself that's going to give you confidence? Maybe mental, that you'll be able to focus or think more clearly. Social, that maybe you'll be a better mother, father, or friend, whatever that might be. Or even financial, that you save money by making this decision, whatever it might be. So you want to think about anything and everything. And then you might also reflect upon recent times that you actually did the right thing and you got positive results immediately following, and try to bring those to the present moment and say, oh, remember that time that you didn't feel like going to the gym and you went, and then how good you felt afterwards, and how you were able to get something done you've been procrastinating on. And then if you bring that to the present moment, it gives you something to leverage to be able to do that right thing. So just listen to yourself and in your head and how you think, and try to bring all of those benefits closer. And I just wanted to mention that after the webinar is over, you'll receive a survey about the webinar. And once you fill out that survey, you'll receive a handout that has all of this information. So that way you don't have to memorize everything. I mean, you can take notes and do something with this as we go through the webinar, but you'll actually get a handout that has all of this information. Okay, so let's talk about barrier number 2. And this is a tendency to have these phrases like, and here are examples. When my kids get older, then I'll finally be able to take care of myself. When I have more money to spend, then I'll be able to eat healthy. If my job environment were better, then I would be happy. If my family understood me better, then we wouldn't argue so much. So it's this when then or if then type of thinking. And I work a lot of times one-on-one with people, and it's amazing how oftentimes in the conversation, as we're talking about changes that they want to make in their lives, that these statements are made, and they don't even notice that they're doing it. Well, when I'm not so busy and things aren't so crazy at work, then I'll be able to take the time to, prepare my meals ahead of time or head to the gym. When my kids are a little bit more independent and not so dependent on me, then I'll be able to do this or that. And what the studies show is that, first of all, we really believe these things to be true. We really see them as 100% fact. You're like, no, it's totally true. There's really no other option. But then what happens is as that when or as that if approaches, we just have a tendency to make a new when or a new if. And so that when or that if never truly arrives, because new whens and ifs end up taking their place. And what the studies show is that it's really based in fear. So fear of whatever it might be, fear of maybe doing certain things and not getting the results that you're looking for, or maybe fear that if I do this, other things are going to slip through the cracks. I'll get fired. I won't do my job as well. My family will think I'm ignoring them. So there's fear or just avoidance, that what you need to actually work on and do is really hard and it takes effort. And maybe you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself that you can actually make it happen. And so it's an avoidance strategy that we use, to avoid having to face that, to put forth that effort, to maybe be a beginner and make mistakes along the way, to not be good at it. So it's just something that I would have you think to yourself, in this area that I'm looking to make a change in, how many when, then, or if then statements might cross my mind, and what am I going to do about that? So a couple of action things here is, challenge yourself and find flaws in your thinking. So as I said earlier, it's not 100% fact. That's just how we choose to see it. And so if you can almost take that statement and say, okay, what's the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or what's flawed in your thinking, I think that just will help you to get through it. Acknowledge what scares you or what you're avoiding. So sometimes that can help. And I really encourage this because a lot of times what scares you or what you're avoiding shows up in other places in your life. It's not just for this one change or shift that you'd like to make, but it's probably showing up in other areas of your life. And if you can acknowledge it and maybe address it, it can help you with a lot of areas. Find what you can manage or control instead of what you can't. So there are certain things that perhaps you cannot control. You may not be able to control the job that you have or the hours that it is or the boss that you have or the number of kids you have. But what can you manage within that? You can manage yourself. You can manage how you think about things, how you feel, your attitude towards those things, the actions that you take. So focusing on what you can control in your life can also help. And then just starting with small action steps. One of the big mistakes we make is trying to do too much at one time, which then makes it overwhelming. And so if your expectation of yourself is to exercise 7 days a week for a whole entire hour, then you're going to be more likely to think of things that are going to get in the way of that. Well, when I have an hour open up in my schedule, then I'll be able to do it, right? So it just creates a platform for more avoidance. And so if you can say, I'm just going to exercise for 10 minutes to get started, 10 minutes. It doesn't even have to be at the gym. I'm going to do it in my bedroom before I shower, using an app that takes me through an exercise, whatever it might be, these small baby steps so that they're manageable and you don't have basically the foundation to create the when, then, and if, then statement. So if you found anything that here helpful that you think could help you take those first steps in whatever you're trying to address, whatever goal you have, I encourage you to jot that down and use it right away. Okay, barrier number 3 is how you think of yourself. And a lot of times people will really say things like, oh my gosh, I need to make so many changes. I am so far away from where I'd like to be. I'm overweight and out of shape. And man, I want to make this transformation like you would not believe. So how they see themselves is far away from actually how they'd like to be. And some people really just say, yeah, I know I've got work to do, but I've got a lot of things going for me and I just need to tweak a few things here and there. And I know that I can feel better and, maybe look a little bit better. And studies show that the more far away you see yourself from where you'd like to be, you actually give into this kind of instant gratification type of behaviors, meaning you're not going to actually follow through with what you intend to do. And this is important because some people will, to motivate themselves, like to eat better, they'll put some crazy picture on the refrigerator of something that just looks nothing like them. Maybe it's their picture from 20 years ago, or maybe it's the picture from some, supermodel that they like to look like. And that's supposed to be their motivation to not go into the refrigerator. And what studies show is that if it's too far away from where you are right now, it actually induces despair and almost this hopelessness. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so far away from that anyway. Who cares? It's just one meal. It's just one snack. It's just one workout or whatever that might be. It's too much, too overwhelming. But if you can acknowledge all of the great things that you have, everything that you have going for you, and just say, with just a few small steps and a few little tweaks, I can feel better about myself. I can be closer to my goals. What ends up happening is when you feel like you're almost there, it's just encouraging. It's kind of like if you go on this really long hike and you get started and you're really tired and you're like, how much further do we have? And you're like, and someone says, there's 90% left. You've only done 10%. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make it. But when you only have 10% left, you're like, that's it. I'm almost done. I'm almost there. And you get almost this second wind of excitement and almost grasping it. So if you can shift your mind into really doing that for yourself around this change, it can really help. So acknowledge the traits and behaviors that you're already doing that you do well, all of your strengths, all of the great things that you have going for you, and then just focus on these incremental changes. What are the small things I can do today that make me feel better today, that align with who I want to be. And when you do that, it really becomes less overwhelming. And then I always tell people the only time that you can take action is in the present moment. So if you can be in the present moment more often, it gives you this platform for doing something for yourself that aligns with what you want to be doing. So instead of looking at, 10 years from now, again, you can't take action 10 years from now. You can only take action now, and the nows begin to add up to who you are in the future. So live in the present as much as possible. Okay, we're almost through the barriers here. Barrier number 4 is temporal discounting. And temporal discounting is a very important survival-based trait. And a lot of times when I'm giving presentations, especially on wellness, and I ask people, why is it that we, stuff our faces with ice cream instead of broccoli? The answer almost always is survival. Survival. Why do we feel like sitting around and doing nothing instead of going to the gym? Survival is the answer. So we've got this programmed survival technique in our system. And that survival technique is not based on the circumstances that we live in today. It's based on very primitive types of circumstances in which there was not necessarily food security. There wasn't necessarily opportunities to rest and recover and be relaxed because there were constant threats in the environment or things that we needed to do to survive. And so that's still programmed in our brain, and it shows up every day, multiple times a day, without us necessarily being aware that that's what's going on. And temporal discounting is one of those things. And that's where we see small rewards now as more desirable than even bigger rewards much later. So the ice cream that's sitting in front of us just looks way more appealing than the notion of not eating these sorts of foods and getting this bigger payoff by having better health and reduced risk of cancer and less overweight and less risk of diabetes in the future. The brain just goes, ice cream, and that's just all it sees. And it's very much like our younger selves, when we want the toy in the store, we just want what we want, and we really can't see past that, right? And it's very emotionally driven. It's not rational. It's not cognitive. And so what happens is that as we go through our day, we know that we encounter situations or people that cause us distress. And when we're stressed, stress ends up causing that emotional part of our brain to be more triggered and to shut down some of that rational brain. So when you're more stressed, people will say, oh, when I'm stressed, I eat too much. When I'm stressed, I do all of these things. Yes, when you're more stressed, your body goes into emotional operational mode, which is survival-based type of thinking, which is to do what feels pleasurable and good now, avoid anything that seems unpleasant or that takes effort, and just live in the moment, because we may not have future moments and we might die, so we might as well just live it up right now. I know all of you can relate to that. So what kinds of things happen with temporal discounting is we overeat. We had this plan, and then we're sitting there, the food is in front of us, our emotional brain gets triggered, rational brain gets kicked to the curb, and then we go, all I care about is stuffing my face and eating all of this great food. We spend over budget. Those shoes are just calling your name. Your emotions are triggered. You're buying the shoes with your emotions, not your brain, your thinking brain. And so then you end up staying up late, even though you need to go to sleep. You're in party mode. You sleep in, even though you should be getting up, because your brain goes, this just feels better. You skip exercise. You might overreact, because that tends to make us, feel like good. When we get angry at someone, we're venting. These sorts of reactional types of things are all based in that survival part of the brain. And so I think what is important is to realize what's going on. If you can become aware that this is your brain playing tricks on you, it's just trying to get you to live now in this pleasure world, and it's avoiding anything that helps you in the future, you can do something about it. So the studies show that if we can delay action by 5 to 10 minutes, you are more likely to take values-driven action, meaning doing what you intended to do instead of what your emotional brain tells you to do. If you can also become more aware of the benefit you're getting from just the short-term behavior, like, oh, this food just tastes good, or I just need to have these shoes and I just can picture them in my closet and what dress they're going to go with, or oh, it just feels so much better to, relax and watch Netflix and not have to do anything, and the gym just takes so much effort. If you can just become aware of what you're getting out of it in a moment to choose that behavior that you might regret later, then you can at least problem solve that and say, yes, you're trying to avoid doing anything right now. Why is that? So you can talk yourself through it, right? The other thing is to imagine these long-term benefits happening sooner. So that's what we mentioned earlier. So if, not eating the pie isn't going to pay off until another 10 or 20 years from now, you don't even know if you're going to be around that long. Well, that's not going to be really helpful, right? So we want to picture benefits that you can get more immediately, how you're going to feel about yourself, energy-wise, whatever it might be. And this last piece of advice is really important, and that is to find a calm, soothing, or relaxing environment before acting. I call it get out of Vegas. Okay, so I'm talking about Las Vegas, Nevada, for anyone calling in from Las Vegas, New Mexico. It's not the same, right? So Las Vegas has been set up in a very specific way. It's loud, it's colorful, it's got lights, it's got all kinds of visual stimuli, sound stimuli for a reason. When you have all of that stimuli going on in your environment, it literally conjures the emotional brain and shuts down a lot of that rational thinking. So this is science. They do this on purpose. So why do they want to do that? Because they want you using the emotional part of your brain in Las Vegas so that you gamble and spend money you don't have, so that you overeat, that you drink too much, you get married to people you just met. I mean, it's like a crazy, crazy world. So what you want to do is you don't want to be in the Vegas atmosphere to make decisions like this. So if you go to a loud bar or restaurant with all kinds of people and it's crazy, you're less likely to pick, good food that's good for you. And so if you can separate yourself out, find a calm, soothing, relaxing environment, even if you have to create that in your head and just close your eyes and take a few deep breaths and create that in your own mind before making a decision, that can also help as well. So just remember that concept of Vegas before making the decisions and see if that helps at all. Okay, the last concept I'm going to talk about in terms of barrier are a lot of the coping mechanisms that we use to explain ourselves, basically to ourselves most of the time. Sometimes we're explaining ourselves to other people, or if I'm doing coaching with a client, they're explaining themselves to me as to why they didn't do some of the things that they had committed to. And these coping mechanisms, once again, come from survival. They come out of trying to make ourselves feel better. So let's say that, you made a decision or you took an action that really wasn't aligned with your wellness goals. And here are some of the common coping mechanisms we use where we kind of avoid responsibility. Well, it was his fault. He brought the donuts to me, and so then I had to eat them. And I was at a dinner party and it was just rude and she made me do it. I really had no choice. And so this is where we start to give up that responsibility for ourselves, and it becomes our environment, our boss, our job, our friends, our spouse, our kids, and everybody else that made you do whatever it is that you did or prevented you from doing what you said you would do. So you were supposed to exercise and then family came into town, so I just couldn't go exercise. It was their fault. They surprised me and now I couldn't go. So that's one category. The second category is this denial, distortion, or selective memory. And this happens more often than we think, where we just, nope, I didn't do that, or it didn't happen exactly like that, or I don't actually remember what I did. And it's funny, if you ever read the book Mindless Eating by Dr. Brian Wansink, they actually do experiments with food with people where they go to eat at a restaurant and they think they're just eating at a normal restaurant, but it's actually like a scientific experiment type of restaurant. And they do all kinds of different experiments with people and their food, just to look at human behavior. And in one of the experiments that they did, they had cameras and they filmed people, for example, at the restaurant eating bread. And then they would interview them and ask them, well, how many pieces of bread did you eat? And literally people would say that they didn't eat bread because they don't remember doing it. It's just so mindless and they were on film eating bread, and they don't remember doing it, or they thought they had one but they had two. And so selective memories can sometimes be selective on purpose, or it can be selective by accident. And so that can happen. Then you have the minimizing category, which is, oh, it's not a big deal, everybody does it. Or, oh, well, if you think that I eat a lot, you should see the people I know and how they eat. Oh, I didn't drink that much compared to everybody else that was there. So this is where we kind of use comparison to let ourselves off the hook, that there are worse things that you could do because other people do it worse, or everybody does it. The next category is where we choose new information. So it's like we choose what we want to hear. And this happens to me all the time. I'll give a presentation and then people will leave the presentation and say, so what I heard you say is that caffeine is good and chocolate is excellent. And I'm like, I don't remember saying it like that at all. And so this is where, you read something about chocolate having health benefits, which justifies the, numerous Kit Kats and Crunch bars you eat. And so that's all you choose to see. Forget that it was in moderation, or forget that it was dark chocolate only and that it was only 1 ounce. Like, you ignored all of that. You just decided to focus in on that chocolate is good for you. Or that exercising increases your appetite. So you're just going to cancel that out by not exercising. That way you don't eat so much. And so you choose to kind of see the pieces that fit whatever you're doing. And that way there's no conflict for yourself. And then the last one is just rationalizing your behavior, which is probably one of the more common ones. And so this is, I have good genetics, I can eat whatever I want, I still feel good, I'm still young, so it's okay. I'm not overweight, so I shouldn't have to worry about anything, right? I don't have to exercise. Exercising takes time away from my family. It would be really selfish to exercise. Or I've been sleeping 5 hours my whole life and everything's fine and I'm doing well at work and everything's great. And so we just justify, we use whatever we're doing, and we find all of the reasons to support that. So what's good to know is that this is human nature. So it's not like there's something wrong with you if you do this. Again, it's a survival-based mechanism. It's self-protective, so that I can feel good about what I'm doing no matter what it is that I'm doing. But it can obviously lead kind of into this dangerous category of, now it doesn't force me to change. It doesn't force me to acknowledge anything that could be not aligned with who I want to be or what I'm trying to accomplish. And so it's an avoidant strategy. And so we want to hit this head on. So a couple of pieces of advice here is to reflect on the values that you have and your purpose in life. And then just find where using these coping mechanisms causes you to be conflicted with your values and your purpose. Challenge yourself on what you're saying and be your own crap detector. So it's really hard to notice this on yourself. If we're talking to a friend and they're coming to you for advice and they're telling you about their bad relationship and then justifying it, and it's so easy to talk to them and see like everything that's wrong with what they're saying and doing. You're like, did you just hear yourself? You just said this. But to do that on ourselves becomes a lot more difficult, and we're not even aware of it. So a lot of times I encounter people and I'll talk to them about nutrition. That's a really common thing that people talk to me about. And they're feeling, at the end of the conversation, I will tell them they used all 5 categories at some point in coping mechanisms. And when I point it out, they really don't realize that they're doing it. So self-awareness becomes a huge piece of everything that I'm talking about. But calling yourself out is that second piece, and that is not the easiest thing to do. If you journal and kind of write out your thoughts, your feelings, when you're encountering these situations, it does help, because when you see it in writing, you can pick it out a little bit easier. So journaling about, the coping mechanisms that you're using or the situations that you're in. If you made the wrong decision and you journal about it, you'll start to be able to pick out some of the things that happened. And then instead of feeling guilty or ashamed or beating yourself up, because the studies show that does not actually help and it does not make you do things right the next time, is to be more action oriented and actually create a corrective plan. So the next time I'm in this situation, this is what I'm going to do. Now that I've reflected upon the situation and what went wrong, for me. Now I know exactly, if I had a do-over, I know exactly what I would do to make that happen. And that's actually much more productive. And when you rewrite that scenario and you do your do-over, when you're in a similar situation in the future, you're actually much more likely to execute on what you planned. So hopefully that is helpful to you. Okay, so I do want to lead into now some principles that I'm going to give you that will help strengthen your brain so that you make less survival-based decisions. So first, you're going to see in the upper left-hand corner that I crossed out this whole notion of you are what you eat. This we are what we eat. So we hear this all the time. You are what you eat. You are what you eat. I think that what is more appropriate, according to the science, is that we are what we think, because our eating habits and what we do with our food actually comes from how we think in our thought process. And so a lot of times people will come to me and they want a nutrition plan and they just want me to tell them what to do. And it doesn't work like that. We have to also talk about how you think relative to your food. What's that attitude? What's your mindset? What are those thoughts? Because if we don't address that, it's really hard to address the action. You can see the 3 circles that I put here: think, feel, act, think, feel, act. So we think about something, it causes us to feel a certain way, this results in action. Those actions that we take then reinforce our thinking. So if we take negative actions or poor actions where we have bad habits, it reinforces the thinking around those habits, and it just becomes the way that we operate. So we want to break that cycle, and you can break it by starting with action. And sometimes action can influence and change the way you think. But if you can change your underlying thinking, that carries a lot more power to then influence your emotions and your actions. So that's my goal. I always try to start there. So I'm going to talk about these 5 daily actions to create a mindset for wellness. And it's daily actions because the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more that you practice this brain training, as I call it, the less likely you are to fall into survival-based actions, and you're going to fall into more of what the rational and cognitive side of things. So I would say practice makes permanent. I would never say practice makes perfect. It makes permanent. So be careful what you practice, because that does become who you are and what you do. So principle number 1 is to find your purpose in life. Figure out why you're here, what's important to you, what you want to get out of life, how you want to feel and be every single day. And when it comes to wellness, this is huge. I really try to get people, when I work with people one-on-one, I ask them this. Doesn't matter if you're coming to me to fix your nutrition and your exercise. I want to know why that's important to you. What is important to you in your life? Who's important to you? Who are you? Because when you're able to identify that you can leverage that to then say, wow, this person that I want to be, that I want to embody, should be eating healthy in order to be able to embody this, right? So it creates this foundation for wellness and why you want to do it and why it's important to you. So it creates this perspective. It gives you a reason to push through challenges and difficulties. Anytime you try to make a change and do something that requires effort, you have to have a good reason for doing it. And what I tell people is, looking good for the summer in a bathing suit typically is not the guiding force that really causes you to make significant change. When people make significant change, it has to do with their families, who they are as a person. Maybe they've had a near-death experience, or something that just they go, wow, I really need to make a change. I don't want everyone to have to go through a near-death experience to make a change in their life. So it's really about connecting to that purpose, and that can then guide you each day. It guides that voice in your head so that you can have a more constructive voice, one that's encouraging and supportive, rather one that tears you down. Because if your voice tears you down, it's harder to make the right choices from a wellness perspective. And your purpose should inspire you. So purpose inspires us to make sacrifices, to do what's hard. And I think that that's really important and key when it comes to wellness. Eating right, exercising, getting enough sleep, managing stress, those aren't easy. And they involve sacrifice. And purpose can really help you drive us to work hard and study hard. You have to make sacrifices to do those things in your life. The best things in your life you had to make sacrifices for and work hard at. And wellness is not any different than any of those things. And so I really encourage you to do this. You'll see in the handout that you get, you'll have all of these questions that you can use to help discover your purpose, why you're here, why you exist, who matters, what matters, why is your life worth living, what impact do you want to have on others, or in your field, in your career, what are your most important values, how do you define success and a meaningful life. And so in this particular practice, I would encourage you first to take the time and to reflect on your purpose and write it down, but then to revisit it often and to talk about it with people, what matters to you and what you're trying to do. If you can wake up every morning and say, what's my purpose again? Oh yeah, and here are the things I'm going to do today that show my purpose. I think that gets your day started in a very specific way. If you can review your purpose at the end of your day and say, what are all the things I did today that really showed who I was as a person and my purpose? And that can include wellness behaviors. Because if you think you're important enough to take care of so that you can then help take care of others, then anything that you did in terms of exercise, stress management, making positive nutrition choices, those are all things that demonstrated your purpose. And we do it more often than we think. We just don't perhaps track it or acknowledge it. So, those are just some things to think about. And then, of course, using your purpose daily in your life to just stay on track. So after you define your purpose, then what we want to do is work on awareness and mindfulness. So if you recall in those barriers that I was talking about, I kept saying you need to be aware. A lot of times we're not aware that we're thinking like this. We're not aware that our emotional brain is sneaking up on us and kidnapping our whole brain into making decisions. So you need to build awareness. And one of the practices that helps you to build awareness is to practice mindfulness. And mindfulness isn't really that complicated. It's about paying attention in the present moment and doing it on purpose. That's it. Paying attention. You don't have to have your eyes closed. You don't have to be in a meditative state. You just have to be present, focused, and aware. That's it. So you could be mindfully brushing your teeth, mindfully shampooing your hair, mindfully eating breakfast, mindfully listening to my webinar, and just being fully present without letting your mind wander to the past and to the future and to your to-do list and things along those lines. And what mindfulness practices do is they help bring rational thought to emotional moments. It helps create bridges between that rational brain and emotional brain. And so if you can imagine that everything we've been talking about is because we're wired to have this survival mode come out. We're wired to have our emotions take over, especially when stressed, especially in situations where the system perceives that there's a threat of any sort. Mindfulness can help bring rational thought to it so that you can say, am I really under a life-threatening situation that I need to have these emotions take over? Is there a better way to look at this? Can I think about my purpose and my values? So it just brings that rational thought. When you practice mindfulness actively, so these are people, when they do studies on people who have been doing 10, 15, or 20 minutes of mindfulness practices per day, they see incredible results with increased awareness and mental flexibility and focus and better memory, self-insight and acceptance of others, and courage and thought regulation. This is at the core of not just wellness, but stress management, resiliency, just so many things that would be important in our lives. Mindfulness can help with that. Mindfulness also decreases stress, anxiety, negativity, the repetition of thoughts, distractions, which can really get in the way of us being productive. Emotional reactivity, that fear response. Remember that when then and if then thinking is based in fear. And so mindfulness can help address a lot of the things that we're talking about. And now they have like mindful eating, mindful exercising, because they know that when people do mindful eating, they eat better. When people do mindful exercise, they exercise harder and they get more out of their sessions. So mindfulness really can help in a multitude of ways. So my advice here on the actions is to find mindfulness apps or books or just exercises that you do yourself that you can use consistently that are practical for you. You can just pick specific moments or activities in your day and decide that every time that you do a certain thing, you're going to be mindful of it. You're going to notice what you're seeing, notice what you're hearing, notice what you're feeling, what you're smelling, what you're tasting, whatever it is. It's bringing all of your senses to the present moment. You can practice mindfulness when you first wake up or just before bed, just like I talked about with the purpose as well. You can set an alarm when it comes to mindfulness and create a cue or a prompt, perhaps to remind you to practice. And 5 to 15 minutes per day can make a difference. And like I said, you don't have, this isn't like 5 to 15 minutes you have to set aside separately from everything you're already doing. You can use the mindfulness on 15 minutes of something that you already do in your day. And that way it's not taking extra time, but you're getting a lot of return on investment on any time that you are, in fact, dedicating. So mindfulness, everyone's going to be mindful. Okay, daily practice number 3 is to challenge your own thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs. Again, super important. You know, when you're working on changing a behavior, you've got to look at the underlying thought process that's behind it. So I have here that the mindset, so our mindset is comprised of beliefs, which are really what we hold really strongly to, our identity, our convictions, our values, what we really hold to be true. And when we look at these beliefs, it's very difficult for us to see that others would think differently. That's how, you know, how strongly we have these beliefs. Attitudes are more like, oh, that's my perspective. That's just how I feel about it. But we really acknowledge that there's lots of different ways that other people might look at it. That's just our way of looking at it. And then we just have these thoughts, these random ideas, thoughts, inner voice stuff that comes to our head. And we're having thoughts every moment that we're awake. So from the time that you wake up until the time that you go to bed, you're having a series of thoughts. And all of these things, these 3 things, really comprise this mindset, and they end up dictating our feelings and our actions. And so when we're talking about mindset and we're talking about change, you know, when it comes to, let's say, nutrition, if you have the strong belief that you must finish everything on your plate, if not, it's a waste, and you know there are people starving in other countries, and you just think it's completely wrong to throw away food, it's going to be very difficult in a society in which we get overserved, sometimes double or triple what we need, to be able to eat better and lose weight or whatever it is that you're trying to address if you can't let go of that belief, right? So this is where those beliefs can get in the way. Or the attitude that, well, when it's a special occasion, then it doesn't count, and I don't have to eat this certain way. I'm traveling, I'm in a different zip code, so it doesn't count. I'm at a restaurant, I'm at a hotel, it's at somebody's house. It's my birthday, it's Christmas, it's Valentine's, it's Easter, it's a Saturday, it's a Sunday. Monday doesn't count. Whatever it might be, we tend to have these series of perspectives that end up, you know, perhaps justifying what we're doing. And so if you're trying to work on making sacrifices, working hard and putting effort into whether it's eating, exercising, sleeping, stress, and you have these particular beliefs or attitudes that really get in the way, or they're justifying the opposite behavior, it doesn't matter if you how many times I tell you or the doctor tells you or a professional tells you that that's not the way to do it. It's going to be really hard to address it unless you challenge these beliefs or attitudes. And then just the thoughts that go through your head, right? It's, oh, it's just one meal, it's not going to hurt, it's fine, you had a hard day, you deserve it. Just these random thoughts that come to our head, and bam, there it is. That's your decision being made. So what I advise is to ask yourself, you know, when it comes to the changes you're trying to make, is your mindset working for you? The beliefs and attitudes and thoughts that you have, are they supporting you in the changes that you want to make? Are they supporting you in making the sacrifices you need to make? Are they supporting you in all of the hard effort you're going to have to put forth to make that change? If not, you have an opportunity to challenge them and rewrite them. Thoughts are the easiest ones to challenge and change because they're just random thoughts coming to our head, and we can easily change those. The second one that's easiest to change are your attitudes. So you can reframe, you know, perhaps think about a different emotion you could have, another thought. And then finally, those beliefs. Those beliefs are the hardest to change. But sometimes they can be the most compelling, especially if you have one that you have just clung to and it completely takes you away from what you're trying to do. And if you can change that underlying belief or conviction about something, and that helps lead you to where you want to be, then that can be very powerful. So hopefully that helps you in some way. The inner voice is something that's really important. So your inner voice basically aligns with those thoughts that I was talking about. It is the master author of your thoughts. And that inner voice can work for you or against you. That inner voice you might recognize as one of your parents or teachers or even a friend that you repeatedly heard their voice and it's sort of become your own. But your voice can be changed. The thoughts that you have can be changed, especially if they're not serving you. You can create a voice that will help you to, it will be your best coach or be supportive of you, encourage you instead of discouraging you. So when it comes to making these changes and wellness in your life, you want to pick maybe a scenario in which you struggle with. It could be, when you've had a really long, hard day, it's really hard for you to eat a sensible dinner or work out. You just want to veg and, open up a bottle of wine and just eat whatever. So you pick a scenario in which it's challenging and then you acknowledge what is that inner voice. And a lot of times it's, oh, you deserve it. And, it's fine. And you're tired. So you should just conserve your energy and not go to the gym and whatever it might be. You want to capture that, right? And then you want to say, is that the voice that's taking me where I want to go? And if not, you can create a new voice. And you actually want to script that voice out. Write out what you want that voice to say to you. Put it on your phone. Put it where you can find it on a piece of paper. When you've had a really long, hard day, you pull out your long, hard day paper. And you have the voice there that you've written down that tells you what you need to do. You've had such a hard day that you deserve to go to the gym and work out and do something really good and nice for your body. And you deserve a healthy meal because that's going to help, recover you from this day and give you the nutrients that you need in your brain and your body to be able to handle more tough days. You need to have that sensible inner voice written down because when you're in an emotional moment, that sensible voice is hard to find. So sometimes you just need an external piece of paper that you've written down that gives you that. You might find patterns in your voice. Notice what your voice says when you do something well. Does it acknowledge you? Does it encourage you? Does it give you that pat on the back? What does your inner voice say when you make mistakes or get off track? Does it beat you up? And oftentimes we talk to ourselves in such a way that we would never talk to anybody else. We say, what is wrong with you? Why did you do that? You always do this. Oh, you suck. I mean, seriously. We wouldn't say that to other people. And if we did, it wouldn't go well, right? So we want to use a voice that, acknowledges you're a human being. We get off track. We make mistakes. You were really tired. You weren't thinking clearly. That's okay. Next time, this is what you're going to do, right? So it's that action-oriented approach. And it's acknowledging that we all make mistakes, but that we have the capability of doing better. So figure out that voice that you think could be helpful and constructive for you. Okay, the last principle is around the words we use, around perhaps some of these behaviors that we would like to engage in. So for example, working out, do you say, oh, I have to work out? Or, oh man, I really need to work out? Or, yeah, I want to work out. I get to work out. I should work out. So how we say things is really important. Most people don't say, oh gosh, I have to go out with my friends today. I mean, unless you're really tired and you don't want to go, you say, yes, I get to go out with my friends today. Or I want to go out with my friends today. Or nobody says, oh my gosh, I have to eat ice cream, right? And although it seems so trivial and silly, how we word this in our head actually makes a difference. Because some of these words we use almost sounds like we're not doing it out of our own free will, that somehow someone is forcing us, some external force is telling us we need to make this happen. So when you say, oh gosh, I have to go to work today, it totally changes the perspective and the attitude and how you feel about work. I have to go to the doctor. I have to pay bills. I have to work out. I have to eat a salad, right? And what we want to do is we want to change the words so that it makes you feel like you're in charge and that you are choosing to do this. It's an opportunity. It's an optimistic type of context. Man, I want to eat a salad and feel good. I want to go to the gym and pump up my muscles and get my cardiorespiratory system challenged so that I can, do all of these great things. And I think it becomes about perspective. I think that there are lots of people out there who have encountered health conditions or, have maybe gone to war and lost their legs, or they're in these conditions that say, man, I wish I could go work out and use my legs. I wish that I could go do some of the things that you can do, and I just have now this inability to make those things happen. And I think part of it is about perspective. We don't realize how lucky we are to be able to make these choices, to have a gym to go to, and have so many choices, and to be able to use our bodies, the way that we're able to use them. We just don't take advantage of all of the opportunities and all of the things that we have available to us. And so I think just reframing and saying, I am so lucky that my body parts still work and allow me to do this. How awesome is that? I can go on a hike and see these beautiful things that are not necessarily wheelchair accessible, or, I think that that perspective really helps, and really taking that action and rewording yourself so that it is you in charge and making these decisions. I go to work because I make a difference. I am going to bed early because I want to. I want to wake up feeling refreshed and being able to give my best to those things that matter to me in my life. So that we're not falling into that victim mentality, but we're very much in charge of who we are and what we're doing. So hopefully that helped as well. So I'm just going to end this by summarizing that, in as we approach change and goals that we have, it's not an easy path. If it were easy, we'd already be doing it. And just know that there are many brain mechanisms in place in our heads from a survival perspective that do sabotage us. They take us off track, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're a human being, and so those sorts of things exist. But by knowing that they exist, how they show up in our lives, gives you a platform for awareness, and it also gives you a platform for deciding what you're going to do with it and how you're not going to let those survival-based tendencies take over your life. That you're going to take charge over the things that matter to you, and put forth all of the actions that we talked about to hack that brain and have it work out of opportunity and not survival. So I'm going to leave you with these quotes. You cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. A 1-degree pivot, as you take one step, 2 steps, and many steps forward, will take you to a completely different place than if you hadn't made the 1-degree pivot. You cannot do everything at once, but you can do something. So every moment of your day, ask yourself if you're having a thought, feeling, or action that is aligned with what you want in your life. And that's all you can really do in the present moment. And it's the little details that are vital. Little things make big things happen. Don't think that you have to do everything all at once, and it has to be some grandiose behavior or goal. It's these small little things that make a difference. So thank you very much. I hope that you found this to be helpful. As I mentioned, you'll get a survey at the end of this. Please take the time to fill out the survey. It's very short. You'll then get emailed a handout of this. And if you enjoyed it, please let people know that we will be sending out a link to be able to see the recording. Thank you very much.